I have always loved the outdoors. That's what drives me as a landscape architect, how I got into this profession. And so just being able to be outside, breathing clean air.
The reason why most or all of us do what we do is to give something back to the end user of the spaces that we're designing.
You know a great project when you see it. There's kind of like an elegance to it in a way.
So you're always just working on projects that are on paper. Then when you get into the real world and start working on real projects, you get to see what you've worked so hard for.
I think my favorite part about designing parks is the end result, seeing the joy on kids' faces, and I think that's really what it's all about, and I think a lot of landscape architects would echo that same sentiment.